Hi there guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna Sophia if you're new here, and I post home decor and DIY content every single Sunday. And this Sunday is no exception. I'm gonna share with you guys 3 thrift flips that I did this past week, but also I wanted to share with you guys today's sponsor, Nordgreen. If you've never heard of Nordgreen, they are a minimalist designer watch brand that would make the perfect last minute Valentine's Day gift. And I have a coupon code down in my description box below, so you'll be sure to check that out when this video is over. More on Nordgreen a little bit later. For now, let's get into our first thrift flip. For the first DIY, I'm gonna share with you guys how I made this shelf pinboard, and the thrift store is always stacked with frames and shadow boxes, and I ended up picking up this shadow box for only $2.99. Obviously, the first thing I had to do was kind of disassemble it, and I don't know why this didn't click in my mind. I thought the glass would come out easy just like a normal picture frame, but this one was actually sealed in, so I had to do something a little hasty, and I actually had to hammer it out. I hope that if this happens to you guys, you can just take it out a little bit more gracefully, but definitely if you have to do what I did, make sure you're wearing gloves, make sure you're wearing goggles, just protect yourself. And although I'm pretty sure that this was actually never even used, there was like some nail polish on the sides of the wood, so I ended up just taking out my electric sander and using 100 grit sandpaper just to get off some of those rough spots before we paint it. And I could have stained it, but I ended up just wanting to keep it really classic and just do a flat black paint. And while the frame was drying outside, the part that becomes the pinboard really just needed a major change because that felt was just so cheap, and I had this linen fabric that I've been dying to do something with. It's a cotton linen blend. So I decided that I was going to kind of reupholster that particle board to make our pinboard. When you're covering or reupholstering something, always give yourself enough slack. So cut about 1.5 to 2 inches out from what you'll actually need. And if you're using fabric, always iron your fabric just to make sure it looks nice and flat. The covering that was already on there was really cheap felt, and I didn't want it to cause any wrinkles for my linen fabric, so I just decided to rip that off and start from scratch. Now you could bust out your staple gun. My staple gun is really heavy duty, so it almost felt like overkill, so I ended up just doing hot glue for mine because I felt like that was a little bit more appropriate. And I just wrapped it like I would anything else, just wrapping it like a present and then cutting off the excess. And by trimming off the excess, I needed enough slack so that the clasps would attach to the back so it would stay connected to the frame. And once that was all done, it was just time to connect the 2 pieces together. So the pinboard portion and our little shelf portion is done, but now something was still missing for me. I wanted to be able to like hang jewelry or maybe keys or something like that from the base of it. So I had these C-hooks lying around, so I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to use them. And I'm just finding the center and then marking that C-hook first, and then I ended up doing 2 more on either side just to kind of complete it. As I mentioned earlier, this video is sponsored by Nordgreen. One of my New Year's resolutions this year for 2021 was to be more present with my loved ones and to spend less screen time. I always dread that notification that comes up that says that you've spent X amount of hours on the phone, and I'm like, oh no, this is so much. And so I thought having a beautiful watch that I absolutely love is the perfect way to avoid the whole, I just need to see what time it is. And then before you know it, you've spent 30 minutes on the phone looking at TikTok, looking at Instagram. And I felt like this was a nice way to kind of break that habit. I ended up ordering the infinity mesh in rose gold and then the black leather watch strap, and I cannot tell you how good the quality really is. And it's just nice to have a watch that is completely customizable because you only have to buy the face once and then you can interchange your straps as you wish, and it's so easy to do. There's like a little latch on the back that you just switch to unlock it and lock it into place. And also their packaging is not only beautiful, but it's delivered in sustainable, eco-friendly packaging made from upcycled plastics and FSC certified papers. So it's very environmentally friendly and conscious. And the last thing I want to mention, Nordgreen, just as a company, they care about the world and the environment, like I mentioned earlier with their packaging, but they also give so much back. So they have so much on their website that you can read up on, but just some basic facts is that they donated 6,500 months of education and over 23,000 months of clean water. The link for the 15% off code is in the description, so don't forget to check it out. Which brings us to our second thrift flip, and also my personal favorite of this video, which is a two-toned coffee table. And while my husband was on a walk with our son, he texted me this picture and said, "Do you want me to bring this coffee table home?" And I said, absolutely. I loved the shape of it. I loved the slats. It had a lot of visual interest already. It was a nice modern shape, but the only thing I ended up having to do to kind of, I guess, repair it was add some wood glue because the pegs weren't really sticking together on the bottom. So, but otherwise it was in really good shape. Obviously it did have watermarks and things like that on the top. So when that happens, I just always take my electric sander with some 100 grit sandpaper and just get off the rough spots. But then also I did want to stain this in a different color. So I ended up sanding the entire thing down, even the sides, just getting all of those rough spots off and whatever stain they had chosen previously. Once I was pretty happy with the amount of color I was able to remove, I didn't want it to be like perfect because I still wanted it to be somewhat rustic and distressed. I ended up just taking some painter's tape to protect that top piece because I ended up just painting the bottom with some matte black chalk paint. I've been really into having the juxtaposition between a really modern bottom and then a sort of like rustic unfinished top. I think it's a really nice mix. So that's why I ended up choosing to do black paint on the bottom. But if you wanted to absolutely sand and stain the whole thing, that would look really incredible. But also keep in mind that would be a lot more work. Chalk paint is so forgiving, so it really allows you to not necessarily have to prime and sand and do all that because the chalk paint really adheres to kind of already finished surfaces really well. But one thing I do want to point out, just because of all of the slats, this was a really hard project to not get drip marks on because just as soon as you were like getting to the next corner, there was a drip mark. So I would say if you have something like this, you want to just keep changing the direction of your paintbrush, go vertically then horizontally, just to make sure everything is spread really well. I ended up having to do 2 coats, as you can see here on the left. This was while I was painting the second coat, and on the right, see how it's kind of streaky? It needed a little bit better coverage, but 2 coats was able to cover it extremely well. And after I was really happy with the coverage I got on the bottom, it was just time to remove that painter's tape, and I had to ask my husband to stain the top of the table. So we're using the same stain that we use all the time, guys. It's in Special Walnut. If you have another suggestion, please leave it in the comments down below. And this is how it turned out. For the final thrift flip for this video, I'm going to show you guys how I upcycled this thrift store box. You can find so many incredible boxes for such an affordable price at the thrift store, and I ended up picking up this one for only $3.99, and there was nothing actually even wrong with it. It just wasn't really my taste, and definitely just needed some TLC, so I'm going to show you exactly what I did. This DIY is probably the easiest of the bunch because we're not like moving mountains. I didn't like the hardware, so that's an easy fix. You just remove the hardware, use a screwdriver, and then I didn't like the color it was, so I sanded it, and then I had a little bit of this Fresh Earth chalk paint left over by Behr, and I just was like, this is perfect. I'll finish this box and I'll get rid of the can. So it was a win-win for everybody. And obviously this McGee & Co piece is gorgeous, and I feel like boxes just look pretty on shelves. You know what I mean? So it's just like such an easy thing, an affordable thing that you can do, and it really can make a major impact in your design. And this last step, totally optional. I didn't need to apply any hardware because you could just leave it as it was, but I really wanted some gold on there, so I ended up ordering these ones off of Amazon. I'll make sure I link it in the description, but I do want to warn you guys, the nails, I mean, there's tiny nails and then there's these nails. They were so small, so they were really challenging to get in. So I ended up having to apply a little bit of hot glue to the inside of the metal hardware just to keep it in place so it was nice and centered after I measured it, because those nails, it was almost impossible to get in. And this is how it looks now. so much for watching. If you liked today's video, please make sure you give it a big thumbs up and hit the subscribe button because I post home decor and DIY content every single Sunday. I hope I see you guys next Sunday. Bye.